Hello and welcome to all those in the chat and those of you watching on the VOD. This is once again your esteemed host, Mr. Shintigercurl, that dude in the straw hat, bringing you, after many delays, another session of Shintigercurl streaming. How's everybody doing tonight? I see, of course, our main man Devil is in the chat, and yeah, I'm glad that you were able to get some work done on those stories of yours, man. Progress is progress, and I'm always proud of it. Yeah, we had some storms today, and I thought it was going to impact my ability to stream, but hopefully this break will last long enough for me to finish out the stream. Last time I wasn't able to stream on Thursday due to some weather, due to some internet issues, and before that I couldn't stream because, well, we were having some really bad storms and didn't want to risk it. Yeah, thanks, man. Life happens. But tonight we're going to continue with chapters 18 and 19 of New World. But before that, I'm gonna get out your guns, lock and load, because it's time to shoot the shit. Got some stuff to talk about. A lot of good wrestling this weekend as the King and Queen of the Ring premium live event took place in Saudi Arabia. And we crowned a new King and Queen of the Ring. For the Queen of the Ring is, of course, Nia Jax, without having actually hurt somebody. And controversially, Gunther, the new 2024 King of the Ring. Yeah, and apparently there was some shenaniganry involved with the pinfall over Randy Orton, who he faced in the finals. But overall, I am very much glad that Gunther is now the new King of the Ring, and he promises to bring prestige back to the title of King of the Ring. I'm looking forward to that. Of course, Cody was able to successfully defend his title against sorry. Here I'm out. He was able to successfully defend his title. Yeah. I finally got rid of it. Also, Double or Nothing 5-year anniversary for AEW. This was AEW's first pay-per-view event, Double or Nothing. Yep, soon to be champ. Yeah, I think he might be able to. Yeah, he might be able to take the belt off Cody. If there's anybody who could take the belt off Cody, it's got to be Gunther. Nobody else. He's that damn good. But yeah, Double or Nothing. Happened this Sunday. I missed most of it because of a family get together we were having, so I missed like the first hour or so. Came in at the middle part of Orange Cassidy versus Trent Beretta, but I was able to catch it all, and great stuff happened. Trent seems to have said that he's done, whatever that means. That we will find out soon. We found out that Will Ospreay, the new international champion after beating Roddy Strong. We saw the return of the one true devil, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, sporting a very familiar looking leather denim jacket. Didn't tell that was obviously a nod to Triple H after his return from his first quad tear to a raucous ovation. And he says that he's not going anywhere. He's like, screw the Bidding War 2024. He is back and has submitted his status by getting a tattoo of Double or Nothing on his calf. Hope that doesn't come and bite it back in the ass, but nonetheless, it is good to see our scumbag back, ready for action. I can only talk about what the matches I saw. Of course, we had, that amazing, brutal barbed wire steel cage match between Adam Copeland and Malachi Black. Brutal as all hell. And we saw a little extra help from none other than the vampire warrior that's fanging and banging, the founder and former leader of the Brood, Gangrel, helping out his former Brood mate. Let's see. I'm trying to remember all the matches that I saw, so I'm just gonna play it by ear. Go to the triple main event. Mercedes Moné taking on Willow Nightingale for the TBS title. Excellent match. Whatever ring rush she had, I didn't really see it, but in the end, Mercedes Moné picks up the victory in her first debut match in the company, becoming the new TBS champion. Of course, the betrayal missiles were fired as Chris Statlander turned her back on poor Willow Nightingale. World title on the line as Father of the Year. Mr. Christian Cage took on Swerve Strickland, sporting a very nice tribute to one of the greatest films of all time, The Warriors. I mean, if you haven't seen The Warriors, what are you doing? One of the greatest movies of all time. Are you sure? Can you dig it? Can you dig it? There's that. So it was an awesome match, of course. It's Christian Cage versus Swerve Strickland. Great matchup. Few shenaniganry, but nothing too warranted. Swerve coming out victorious. And in the main event, shit hit the fan as Anarchy in the Arena pitted the New Elite against the team of Bryan Danielson, FTR, and Darby Allin. And this one, I don't understand how they are able to top themselves when it comes to just to these matches. It's just incredible. It was crazy. It was exciting. It was crazy shit. The two spots that everybody is talking about, the fact that Darby Allin lit Jack Perry on fire with that flamethrower, Chekhov's flamethrower, and Darby Allin getting strung up by his feet and beaten like a emo piñata. But in the end, Jack Perry hits his own Cena Killer against the man who innovated the Cena Killer, Bryan Danielson, to pick up the win for the New Elite. Great win. If you haven't seen it, it is fantastic. It was a crazy ass spot. He just lit his legs on fire, and I'm like, wow, just wow. That whole match is worthy of the title Anarchy in the Arena. Heard nothing but positive things about Anarchy, about this match. So going forward, we're going to be doing that. Also, in Monday Night Raw news, something that might be interesting to a lot of you folks, especially when it comes to women's wrestling. It was Becky Lynch took on Liv Morgan in a steel cage match for the Raw Women's title, and Dom Dom helped out Liv Morgan, getting himself some sugar. Mommy's not going to like that. But afterwards, the fans gave Becky a standing ovation and said, "Thank you, Becky." The reason being is because as of January 1st, this week, Becky Lynch's WWE contract is set to expire, and there is heavy rumors that she will not be renewing her contract with the WWE, meaning that we have possibly seen the final match of the man, Becky Lynch. If this is true, then it was a fantastic run. Like, nobody gave her a shot. She got herself over. She became the hottest wrestler in the entire company. Not the hottest female wrestler, the hottest wrestler in the entire company. I remember those days when Becky was just mega over. Like, she was just, yeah. So yeah, there's that. Now, the question is, where will she go? She could possibly join up with AEW, with the obvious answer, go where Mercedes would be, and really help out the women's division. The women's division has been turning a corner lately. It's been doing great lately. I heard the good things about Timeless Toni Storm and Serena Deeb being a great match with a shaky start. But yeah, they've got a solid women's division. If Becky joins up with that, sky's the limit for the women in AEW. But she could also take Trinity's route and head to TNA. TNA has a great women's division, and having her there, Rebecca Quinn there, yeah, that's going to be something good. All right, in other news, some sad news on the basketball front, as we have lost a major legend. Bill Walton, Hall of Famer and former member of the world champion Boston Celtics, passed away this week at the age of 41 due to cancer. Walton was... all I knew him was more about what he did off the court. He was just he was just this tall white guy with this bright, brilliant smile. He had such a knowledge of the game, and he was just everybody. Yeah, she could do that. Take some time off to be mom. So yeah, there's that. So whatever she wants to do, that. But yeah, Bill Walton sadly passed away, and Bill was absolutely fantastic wrestler. I mean, not a wrestler. I mean, a great a basketball player. His only weakness was his foot. He had a chronic foot injury that really took years off of his career. But at least he was a part of one of the greatest basketball teams to ever play the game, the 85-86 Boston Celtics, led, of course, by the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, the hick from French Lick, Larry Bird. And Bill Walton's loss will be felt for the entirety of basketball. So, Rescue and Pache, Bill Walton. Let's see what else has been going on lately. Nothing much. Some little personal stuff been happening. Like I said, my cousin was visiting. He's like a bigger brother to me. If you're listening, BB. Thanks for your kind words about my voice being so great and all, and thanks for your constant support of being like the bigger brother that I never had. And hopefully we'll see you again on Thanksgiving, and you will be welcome because everybody loves you. So there's that. So that's why I've been busy the entire weekend, just playing host to him and showing him around town. Eventually gonna get him to eat some Whataburger. He's heard about Whataburger. I tempted him with some Whataburger, but he's trying to watch his weight. He's like, Greg, you're being too mean to me. This tasty ass Whataburger. I can't. I'm just like, gotta have it. So BB, next time you're here, we're getting you a Whataburger. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Prepare to go back to Chicago with a couple of pounds heavier because we're feeding you. Of course, people wanna text me while I'm doing this. Oh, no, that's nothing. Wow, okay. Let's see what else. Other than that, nothing much has been going on lately. So there's that. But now that that's out of the way, I think we've got... Oh, wait a minute. Before we do anything, I just reminded myself. Before my last episode, about a week ago, Mr. Mike Shell, the Fez head himself, donated me a sizable sum of money for a particular segment that he wanted me to do. It's not much, but he did pay for it, so I'm going to do it right now. Here's a different take on the fight that happened in the last chapter. And if you've been a long-time fan of mine, you know who's going to be playing these characters. So, hello, I'm Dog and Riffall. Welcome to Thor Riffall. Fight your mum. It's where me and me lad's gonna beat the crap out of you, because that's what I do. And if you're convincing me that I'm the manliest man who ever manned Pete Dunne, you're sadly mistaken. And I'm here to beat the absolute crap out of this vampire ponce who dare say something about the nice bird. That's the girl Reese Foe. And I brought a friend along with me. It's my friend Groose. Groose. Hello. Greetings, it is I, Groose. Not to be confused with Suzuki. You can believe me. I am a Sasquatch. I very violent. I like having sexual relations with prostitutes. Yes, Suzuki. No one was decided. Yes. Alright, thanks a lot, Groose, who is totally not Minoru Suzuki. And now, look, here comes that Winnie Ponce called Alfonso. Are you ready to fight, Alfonso? Hello, my name is Alfonso. I'm a bloody Ponce. No one likes me, and I'm gonna die getting the nut granny knocked out of me. Backbreaker, 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 backbreaker. Yeah, that one was for you, Mr. Mike Shell. And of course, thank you for the contributions to the channel. It's always welcome and appreciated, unlike some other content creators who shall remain names. Dark side Phil. Okay. All right. Silliness out the way. News out of the way. I think it's time we get to the meat shit. Time to pull out. Make sure you get your copies out, ladies and gentlemen, because it's time to get to the next chapter of New World. And time to bring out the Dragon Ball voice. Last time on New World, Battle of Castle Dracula rages as Lucas and the crew made a incredible entrance into the castle. Thor faced off against one of the Bathory boys, using a powerful glove called the Nimbus Glove to command the very weather itself. But thanks to his toughness and inventive strategies, Thorgan was able to defeat him and then beat the ever-loving crap out of the vampire. But a single shot had sent a chill down his spine. What's gonna happen? Who will face off against who as we move on to Chapter 18, The Battle of Castle Dracula, Part 4, Ryss versus Crow. Ryss Fode stood still in the open air of one of the castle's minor gardens. She had quickly taken refuge behind a rather elegant-looking marble statue of a gentleman on horseback. She tried to steady her nerves and get a handle on her situation. Only a few moments prior, she was quickly but carefully making her way through this part of the southern area of the castle, searching for the royals and in turn finding the Bathory party. Ryss checked the area with her sharp eyes and even sharper ears. There was no one around. She could hear the faint sounds of battle from far-off places in the castle, but here, nothing. She had only taken a few steps into the garden when a shot rang out. She slipped out of the way of the round before taking cover behind the statue. Slipping. It was a high-level combat technique taught by the elite battle schools of the Clear Islands. It uses the increased sensory acuity of elves. Using the increased sensory acuity of elves, this technique allows one to move with such a fluid motion that they could dodge a projectile, regardless if the person knew it or not, i.e., slipping out of the way of the object. Any elf with a high level of battle experience can perform such a maneuver, and Ryss was such a person. This was far from the first time she slipped in combat. She'd actually lost count of the times she performed it, but her steely nerve was shaken at that moment. Why? The reason wasn't the fact that someone shot at her, but it was her cheek. She touched it. There was blood coming from a small scratch. This was her first time as a soldier and as a freelancer that someone wounded her while she was slipping. Ryss took a deep breath and began slowly to steady her heartbeat. There was no time to panic. She had to assess the situation. In her hand was Whisper, undamaged but still ready. The bitch cannon was over to her right, dropped when she began to slip. She didn't dare try to get it now. Not yet, anyway. The elf concentrated on her impressive hearing. She blocked out all the unnecessary sounds of the distant fighting. That didn't matter right now. There was nothing. Not for a quarter mile, not for a half mile, not even a full mile. No voices, no gunshots, no footsteps, nothing at all. She was completely alone here. This told her a few things about her mystery opponent. 1. They were well out of her range of hearing or naked vision, meaning that they were able to hit her from nearly more than a mile away. Impressive marksmanship. 2. They didn't follow her here. There were at least 3 other places she visited that she could have, since she split up from the others, that would have been optimal places to ambush her. No, they picked here. That means that she walked into their line of sight when she entered this garden. 3. They were an excellent sniper. To be able to snipe her from more than a mile away is no mean feat, for that is a feat no mere random grunt could pull off. Plus, there was a slight breeze from the west. The skill to be able to compensate for such a thing from such a distance shows an experienced shooter. 4. The weapon they were using was of high quality. She looked back at the bullet lodged in the wall. The cracks surrounded and the depth of the bullet showed that the gun was exceptionally well made and maintained. 5. They knew about her, or the very least of her. It was no fluke or random chance that they happened to hit her while she was slipping. They had known that she was both an elf and capable of slipping. This goes far beyond reading a file on her. They had to have seen her slip to be able to tag her. All the factors gave her an idea of the identity of the mystery shooter, but there was still one thing left she had to figure out. She took off her stealth cloak. She wasn't going to be anyway, so it would only help her figure out the last part of her analysis. Ryss carefully wrapped around the barrel of her rifle. She edged it out of her hiding place and out into the open. Bang! The bullet pierced the cloak and hit the wall behind her. She pulled it back and examined the hole. Her analytical elven brain began to work, calculating the angle and velocity of the shot. Based on the tearing of the hole and the impact site, she assumed the shooter was from an elevated position. She cautiously checked the surrounding buildings and parapeces. They were high enough, but the angles weren't matching up. Then, from the corner of her eye, she spotted it, and it all fell into place. A clock tower. Of course, it was perfect. An amateur would pick the throne room since it was the highest point in the castle, but it offered no great angles for sniping. But the clock tower, it had the proper height and the proper angles. It had unobstructed views of nearly every point in the castle proper. If she was setting up a sniper's nest, it would be the place she would go. They could have taken a shot at her at numerous different points in her trip around the castle, but they picked this place. After looking around, she knew why. There was barely any cover from the clock tower's position. They shot at her not just to get her attention, but to put her in a box. That's all she needed to know. There was only one person in Eric's entire party she knew had the skills, experience, and gear to be able to take her in such a manner. Captain Crow. From his spot at the top of the clock tower, Crow smiled as he looked through the scope of Long John at her position. It was a hit, Captain, said Glasses, looking at the same spot with his mechanically modified eyes. She's a cautious one, this elf, he said, loading another shot into the chamber. She did that to get my location. You think she knows we're here? General location, maybe. Exact location is a leap, but I wouldn't put it past her. And she's as good as dead. I wouldn't get ahead of yourself, Glasses. She knows she's backed into a corner, and that I have a superior positioning, but she's not giving up. I bet she's planning on how to get me down from there. She's planning on how to get me from down there. I won't relax until she's dead with a bullet between her eyes. He sighed. I had hoped to get Kane first, but I'll settle for his elf. For Swarley? Goes without saying, buddy. Now then, what will you do, my dear? Ryss sat, lost in her own thoughts. She sat in a spot that she was in a spot that she had never been in before. An impossible match for her. Knowing his position was one thing. Firing on it from where she was another thing entirely. She could get a shot off, maybe two, but the likelihood of actually hitting him was astronomically low. On the reverse, he could easily wound or even kill her with a shot before she even could get close. She rested the butt of Whisper against her forehead. Her thoughts turned to her brother, Ryklus. Her mind drifted back to her childhood in the Clear Islands, to the early lessons he gave her on shooting and hunting. He was a genius sniper, even more so than she was. The hero of the Battle of Egypt. Was this how he felt? Trapped in a situation that did him no favors? For him, it was the last 5 days alone against 3 divisions of the AOG, a single sniper against thousands. Did he feel despair? Hopeless? Terrified? It was difficult for her to imagine that her brother being any of those things. Her strong, proud brother. Ryss snapped out of her thoughts. There wasn't time for that. She needed to win this death match with the pirate captain. She eyed the bitch cannon, not 7 feet from to her right. Getting it was out of the question right now. Shame, really. With it, she wouldn't need the exact location, what with the firepower that thing had. She checked her surroundings. There were statues littered about the garden. They would be good cover, but getting between them would be the main issue. There were also rows upon rows of green hedges, too. Good for visual cover, but if Crow knew she was sneaking amongst them, they would provide about as much cover as a wall of marshmallows. But those were out of the question. She needed to get more info on him, and she knew how to get it. Whisper in hand, she made a mass dash for the statue to her left. Bang! Ryss slipped past the bullet, causing it to cut through her hair. Bang! She slipped again, this time the bullet passing between her legs. Ryss slid to the base of the statue. She steadied her breathing as she processed what happened. There was a slight delay between her becoming visible and the sound of the first shot. Must have a spotter, possibly the short pirate by the name of Glasses. Also, the time between the first and second shots were a little over a second. That meant that he was a bolt-action rifle of some type. Perfect. Whisper had a reload time a little under a second. She eyed the 2 bullets that nearly hit her. The angles were the same. He hadn't moved from the spot, which didn't surprise her. Based on these things, she calculated that she had about 1 second to aim and fire off a round. Not much, but it was better than nothing. She cocked Whisper and held it ready. She had to be quick. Ryss twisted her body as she peeked out of cover. She took aim and fired. She recoiled back into cover just as a bullet hit the ground. She chambered around as she began to replay the events in her mind. She didn't hit him, that much she knew. It went low. But she wasn't aiming to hit him. She needed to gauge the distance and direction. The wind threw off her aim by at least 6 inches. She compensated for it in her head. She twisted to the other side and took aim, fired again. Once more she returned to cover before a retaliatory shot came. Again she missed. This time the shot was high, missing his head by 6 feet. Ryss made the calculations in her head. "She's back in cover," said Glasses, watching her position like a hawk. "Quick little mix, isn't she?" Crow commented, loading another round in Long John. "She's trying to get her read on the angles and the wind. Better put her down soon before we start eating lead. Just have to shoot her when she pops out next time. Not so fast, it's a guessing game now." Glasses looked at him questioningly. She can shoot from either side of the statue. With her reflexes and quickness, she could squeeze off a round pretty fast, but which side would she come from? Left or right? Shouldn't take too much to... The smaller man's words were cut short by a round hitting the stone ledge just below him. He ducked quickly while Crow looked through his scope. He saw her body, rifle pointed in his direction from the left side of the statue. Unfortunately for him, he was looking at the right side. By the time he was readjusting his aim, she had returned to her hiding spot. "Slick bitch." Crow fired off a round in frustration. Ryss waited. The last bullet wasn't aimed at her. He was more likely just letting off steam. She had him off his game, but not by much. She could play this peekaboo game for a little while longer, but it was too much of a waste of time. He had to change up tactics, and she had an ace up her sleeve, one that Crow wouldn't imagine that she would have. She took off into a hard run to her left, making for the next statue. "She's running!" shouted Glasses. "Stupid bird." Crow cocked Long John and fired. Ryss slipped past the bullet. He smiled as he loaded another round. He finally got a handle on that slipping of hers. The next round would go between her eyes. Then she did something that he didn't expect or even could predict. She stopped dead in her tracks and aimed the gun right at him. The elf squeezed the trigger. Instead of a single shot being fired, it was a wave of gunfire. Both pirates plunging under the stoneworks as the female sniper rained impact rounds on their position. "Slagging hells!" exclaimed Glasses. "How can she fire that fast?" "She can't," he replied, sounding a bit more frantic than he wanted to. "That monster in her hands is an automatic too, or at least a semi." "An automatic? How are we supposed to fight something like that, Captain?" As best we can. Come on, we're changing spots." Ryss released the trigger and made for the next statue. She sunk to her knees and popped out a smoking magazine. It had been a while since he needed to use the automatic setting on Whisper. The kickback was hard to compensate for, but it was enough to get the point across. As she loaded another magazine, she thought of how the pirate captain and her spotter were reacting to this. They probably would have moved, either to the left or the right. A new position means new calculations to get down. That would buy her time. While sniping from such a position did have its advantages, it also had disadvantages. One of them was the angles. From such a height and how far away the target was, it's easier to hit them, but the closer they were, the harder it was. At a certain distance from the tower, he would need to angle his shots downward, not a comfortable position for any sniper. If they were on the same level of the ground, this would be not a problem for him. If she should get close enough to the tower, it would make his shots all but ineffective. Based on the angle, the size of the tower, and the wind resistance, she would need to be within 60 feet of the tower to be safe. She would have to go forward, which was dangerous. Going straight at him was asking for a quick death, even with slipping. But she had a chance. A few shots wouldn't be accurate due to him changing spots, so she had to take advantage of that fact. There was one tack that she could use right now. Something that she hadn't actually done in combat. Something that she had only done in practice with her brother more than 60 years ago. It was risky. It was her only chance. Dwarf were here, he'd yell at her for even thinking of trying something so, in his own words, bloody stupid. Foolish dwarf, she muttered. She wondered if Thor was all right. She'd kill him if he wasn't. She gave a sharp exhale and emerged from her hiding spot. She ran straight for the tower, aiming for the next statue a few dozen feet ahead of her. The world seemed to slow down for her as she turned up her elven senses to maximum. This wasn't going to be easy to do. Sharpening her senses was highly taxing, but she had to do it. Her ears twitched. A shot rang out. Her skin felt the subtle change in air pressure. She could smell the faint odor of powder. Her eyes scanned the air ahead of her. She caught a glint of light as the bullet sped towards her. Her nerves snapped into action, commanding her arms to move and lift her gun to her eye as she continued to run. She ran the calculations in her head. It was a rush job, but now good enough for right now. She fired her bullet. She fired, her bullet cutting through the air and found its target. The two rounds collided with each other, smashing themselves into bent bits and fell to the ground. She knew Crow would be stunned by this, but for only a second or two before he regained his wits and fired again. She was halfway to the next statue when he fired again. She tightened her senses again. Another bullet screamed towards her. She repeated her actions, downing the round with her own. She slid to the statue and hid. Rhys's breath was ragged. Sharpening her senses was easy to do. Any elf could do it, but sharpening all of them? Much harder to do. And doing so while running and gunning, it's a miracle she hadn't passed out. Her head was killing her as she tried to settle her breathing and calm her heart. 70 feet into the safe zone. If she could keep this up, she'd be in good states. Did she just... stuttered Glasses. Yeah, she did. Crow answered grimly as he lit it another round. Maybe they were flukes. Not with this lady. She's good. And a wee bit crazy. Only an elf could pull that off. And what can we do? If she gets closer, I know. Time to show this bitch what kind of skill a pirate sniper can do. Glasses, give me some reflect calcs. The smaller man grinned as he looked over the area, his augmented vision giving him the information. That wall over there, 30 degrees to the left, wind's not an issue there. Good. Let's see how you handle this. Rhys's headache began to subside as the calm found her. The situation was far more favorable now. She knew she had her she knew he knew her recent show of skill wasn't an accident or a fluke. She could shoot his rounds out of the sky. She could advance without worry. The closer she got, the harder it was going to be for him. She had to keep up the pressure. Bang! Before she could even wonder what or why he was shooting at, a bullet smashed the ground next to her. Bang! A second round found the ground, this time closer. Bang! She had to slip her head to avoid eating a bullet to the head. Now she figured out what he was doing. He was using ricochet shots to hit her from behind cover. Crow was missing her, but only because he was making guesses on where she exactly was. Dear gods. This wasn't just him doing this out of sheer panic or desperation. He knew what he was doing. Thinking upon it, the captain's skill frightened her. Bang! 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 Rhys pulled her body tighter against the base of the statue. The shots were getting closer. She considered jumping out and running closer, but he was probably expecting her to do that. He may have already made the adjustments if she did make a run for it. Bang! Rhys hissed as a hot round drove through her leg and into the ground. She stifled a pained scream, not wanting him to know that he hit her. She was glad the bullet went all the way through, but the pain was no less excruciating. The elf slapped a gloved hand on the wound, trying to stem the blood oozing from her leg. Sweat poured from her forehead. Her teeth clenched so hard she would fear they would break. She used every last bit of her elven muscle control to close the holes as tightly as she could. Swiftly and silently, she tore a piece off her sleeve and wrapped it around her wound. She was so focused on this that she barely noticed the bullets impacting around her. The patch was passable. She could run, but nowhere near as fast as before. Suddenly, those 70 feet seemed like 70 miles. "You think you got her?" Glasses asked. "Don't know. Either I missed her, killed her, or I hit her and she doesn't want us to know," the captain noted as he locked her on her position. "I'm not going to relax until I see a body." He fired off another 5 shots, bouncing them off the walls and hitting her presumed hiding spot. Ryss groaned as she moved to avoid the shots. She had run through the scenario in her head 100 times. Each one had a worse outcome than the last. Between those trick shots and her leg, she had no options. Well, almost no options. There was one tack she was tempted to try, one that had a very little chance of success, but it was better than the others, with 0 chances of success. It relied on her endurance, speed, his arrogance, and a large amount of luck. This was extremely stupid, but like Thorgan probably would say, stupid can be a good factor in battle. She pulled herself to her feet and readied herself. This wasn't going to be pleasant. Ryss dashed from behind the statue and made a beeline for the tower. Crow was stunned for a second. He didn't think she'd do something this nutty, and with an obviously wounded leg. The bird's nuts. He took aim and fired. Even wounded, Ryss was still able to slip past the round. She lifted up Whisper and returned fire, barely missing him. She was 50 feet away from the safe line. Crow smiled to himself. She could have easily shot them out of the air, but she didn't. Her wound must be worse than it looked. It could affect her shooting efficiency. She must be relying on her elven stamina to try to get her under the tower and out of his range. Crow chuckled. Not fast enough. He fired on her advancing form. Again, she slipped out of the way. 40 feet left. Each shot, her reflexes in slipping got slower and slower. 30 feet left. Her next shot grazed her hip. She was barely able to dodge his bullets now. 20 feet left. Put up a good fight, my dear, but you came up short. The pirate laughed as he took aim at her head. They were so busy celebrating that they didn't notice that Ryss was looking right at him, or that she had subtly shifted her body 4 feet to the left of him, or that she held Whisper solely with her right hand with the barrel pointing downward, or the fact that she had angled her body in such a way that her left side was slightly more forward than the rest. Crow fired. Ryss locked in on the bullet as it sped towards her. This was it. If she didn't do this just right, she would be dead. When it got about 5 feet from her, she slipped, but not fully to her right. The bullet pierced her left shoulder. The pain was just as bad as the last one, but she fought to stay conscious. The impact round twisted her around, but as she did, she pulled the trigger of Whisper. What happened next would seem very impossible, but remember, this is the new world, and here everything is possible. The bullet raced upward and curved. That's right, the bullet curved. The pirates didn't even take note of this fact that she had fired a round. All they saw was her falling body. The bullet arced upward and around their position, finally finding home in the eye of the smaller man. Glass's body flew backwards as the bullet shattered the lens of his right eye and plowed through his skull. "Glasses!" Crow shouted as he dropped Long John and ran over to his side. "Glasses! Glasses! Speak to me!" Crow didn't hear his last words of his oldest friend. What came out of his mouth was sounds that should be reserved for someone who had too much grog to drink. Blood pooled around his skull as he laid on the ground. He muttered something akin to the word "captain," and then he died. Crow didn't move for a few minutes. He fought back tears. For him, tears had no place in battle, even for friends. First, Swarley died against Lucas Kane, and now Glasses joined him. He had always been his spotter since he was just a cabin boy years ago. He wasn't sure how he was going to keep going with the crew if Glasses wasn't there. He stood up and looked over the side. Ryss had rolled her way towards the tower and into the safe zone. She stopped just under the shadow of the tower. He considered picking up Long John and filling her full of holes, but she was too close to the tower. The likelihood of him hitting her was now almost zero. He started to think of the events that led up to this. How did she hit him? He ran through all the data in his head, and then it hit him like a sack full of bricks. Crazy bitch, he uttered. She curved the bullet. It wasn't something that was unheard of. Hells, he could do it, but it would take so much setup and training that it was little more than a show or party trick that had very few actual combat applications, but she pulled it off. She used the recoil of the wound to twist her gun at just the right speed to give the curvature just right. Not only did she need an absurd amount of calculations and on-the-spot adaptation, but to pull it off the way she did, she'd have to put her life on the line to do it. That took more than guts. It took a level of fearlessness that Crow had to admit he completely lacked. Okay. I'll see how it is. He looked down at his now deceased friend and crewmate. Don't worry, buddy. I'll be sending you some company real soon. He looked down at his rifle and considered taking it back up. No, can't play the long-range game with her anymore. This one needs to get stuck. Crow gave his friend a last gentle pat before pulling out his sheath sword and making for the entrance of the clock tower. Bleeding and aching all over, Ryss sat up from her prone location. Her arm was numb, save for a tingling sensation in her fingertips. She reached up to his shoulder wound and hissed horribly. The bullet was still in her. It had to come out. She reached into her pocket and produced a small knife she kept for protective purposes. Her breath quickened as she prepared to insert the tip inside her wound. She stifled a scream and as she dug into her own flesh, searching for the bullet. Thankfully, it wasn't too deep, and with a quick flick, the projectile was out and tumbled to the ground. Great goddesses! She cursed as she closed the wound. She'd never been this hurt before. Never seen so much of her own blood. Never been in so much agony. That won't stop her. She glanced up at the tower. He was sure she got one of them, but the question is, which one did she hit? There was only one way to find out. Picking up Whisper, which felt a lot heavier than normal, Ryss ran towards the entrance of the clock tower. Inside, the sound of gears and pulleys had drowned out the distant melody of combat outside. Ryss would have been in awe of the complexity of the machinery above her if she wasn't so busy thinking of who she was potentially facing in the structure. Her answer came in the form of a gunshot that barely missed her head. Ryss snapped her head up. Whisper aimed at her with her one good arm and saw Crow standing on the scaffolding. Long John pointed at her. Hello, dearie, he smiled, but it was a bitter, joyless smile. Ryss felt sweat fall from her brow, but she refused to show weakness before him. Captain Crow, I presume? He nodded. I would say it's a pleasure, but the fact that we've been trying to kill each other for the last 35 minutes makes it less than a pleasant meeting. Indeed, Miss Fold, was it? You've given me a lot of trouble. I mean, I heard all the stories about how damn good elven snipers were, but you take the cake. I appreciate the compliment. She glanced around the area. I take it your spotter won't be joining us? Crow's eyes twitched, and his smile nearly broke into a hateful sneer. His name, he started darkly, was Glasses. Nice trick with the bullet back there, by the way. Did a very good job of shooting his eye out. It was a risk, but it paid off. So what do we do now? You could have killed me with your gun a moment ago. True. But with your arm like that, using that rifle of yours would be all but impossible. I could pop your brain out of your skull, but... The pirate captain jumped down to the ground, rifle at his side. Before Ryss could inquire about his motives, he dropped Long John to the floor. I think I would very much like to get up close and personal. Crow unsheathed his saber, a blade milky white in color. Don't you really think you could hit me with that thing using one arm? At least not before I cut your throat. And he was right. She didn't bother trying to bluff against him. The likelihood of her shooting and killing him, even at such a short distance in an enclosed area, was low. So, she did the only logical thing she could. She dropped Whisper to the ground. Giving up, huh? He chuckled. Certainly would make it all the easier to stick you. If you believe my inability to fire a weapon makes me an easy target, then you have made a fatal error. Ryss vanished in a blur of motion, almost too fast for Crow to see properly. He had seen enough to get his saber to block a blow from her. A shower of sparks erupted between them. Ryss spun away before he counterattacked. He then saw what she was attacking him with. A curved blade about 2 feet long with a bluish hue on it. It was too long to be called a dagger, but too short to be called a sword. Didn't know you had a blade on you. I'd be foolish not to. She glared at him, blade at the ready. Fine. Let's dance. The two combatants dashed at each other, their blades meeting halfway. It was a dizzying display of swordsmanship, thrusts, parries at awesome speeds. Ryss's form was that of a lethal ballerina, with twists and turns as elegant as it was deadly. Even with a single arm, she was nearly more than Crow could handle. He barely dodged out of the way of an upward slash to his chin. With eerie fluidity, she changed her grip on her blade and slashed downward, nicking his nose. Ignoring the blood, he thrust it forward, the elf parrying it and twisting around, giving her own thrusts. Crow jumped backwards to avoid it. Ryss landed on a front kick to his chest. She changed her grip to an underhand one and danced forward, moving from side to side. Her slashes were furious, striking at speeds he didn't think she had. Crow looked into her eyes. She didn't blink or lose sight of him for a moment. Her focus was totally on him. His every move, his every twitch, his every slight motion. She was like a hawk, zooming in on her prey. Her useless arm and leg seemed not to hinder her fighting in any way. The way she fought, you'd think she was trained to fight with one arm. As they broke away, she held her blade at the ready, eyes locked on him. Her breathing was heavy. He noticed a stream of blood coming from her useless left arm. Must be that elven muscle control I heard about, he said. That's how you got your leg working so well. You are well informed. Yep. So you're concentrating on keeping your leg together while ignoring that arm. As you can see, I only need one arm for this. Crow sucked his teeth. Oh, but that blood from your arm. It might bleed out. I shall manage. And then fighting style. Shintigercurl. She arched an eyebrow. You know of it? Only secondhand. The fabled martial art of the Clear Islands, emphasizing fast footwork and precise striking, but he dusted off his shirt where she kicked him. Sorry to say, but you got no power. How do you expect to beat me? I don't need striking power to cut your throat. Ryss flipped her grip again and was upon him. He blocked her slash with his blades as their blades clattered with each other. You should surrender. I have superior skills in this area, she said. Crow gritted his teeth. I think you might have a point. But I think you're forgetting one thing. And what is that? That I'm a pirate. And pirates cheat. Crow flipped a small switch on his guard. Immediately, the blade lit up like a light bulb, and arcs of electricity rippled across it. Instantly, the electricity flowed from his blade into hers and into her body. Ryss screamed in absolute agony as her body turned into a lightning rod. She flew back across the ground, convulsing from the shock. Crow cackled in glee as he saw his nemesis ride on the ground. Didn't expect that, did you? Ow! She coughed as the pain died down. Oh, this? He gestured to his saber. This is an elemental sword. Guess it's the first time you're seeing one. Heard these babies are all outlawed here in the Empire, but not in the pirate territories. See, these things cost a bit of coin, but well worth it. But you know that already. He advanced upon her body. He slashed down at her, but she rolled away. She found her footing and instinctively blocked his next slash with her blade. The instant the contact was made, that familiar feeling of hot current surged through her body again. She tried to ride it out, but the saber won out. She staggered in reverse, dropping her blade. Crow kicked her in the stomach and followed up with a cross with his free hand. As she laid on the ground, He stepped on her injured leg, grinding his boot into her bullet wound. The elf roared from the sharp pain and used her free leg to kick at him. He hopped and watched her struggle with some semblance of control. Feisty to the end, eh? Well, this is certainly the end. You know, you and your crew have caused me quite a bit of turmoil lately. First, Kane kills Swarley, and then you kill Glasses. I normally don't hold grudges, but today is not a normal day. Talk entirely too much, she spat. Maybe. But you should hear this next bit. Once I'm finished with you, I'm gonna hunt down and kill every last member of your little gang, leaving Lucas Kane for last so he knows what it's like to lose his friends. I'm sure LaRue can deal with that giant hairball of yours, so I'll go after that nice little fairy. And after that, I'm gonna put a skull in that little dwarf bastard. And to make it all the more special, he leaned in close. I'm gonna use your gun to do it. I love irony like that. Ryss willed herself to stop the pain in her body. She looked up at the pirate captain and gave him the hardest, ugliest, dirty glare that he had ever seen. Using the wall as a prop, she pulled herself to her feet and looked him straight in the eye. For someone so smart, you keep making mistake after mistake. And pray tell, what mistake have I made? For one, you actually believe you could kill Thorgan Riffall? He said with a small laugh. That fool is far too stubborn to die. Really now? Yes, really. And your second mistake was thinking you could threaten his life while in my presence. Crow smiled. Ah, the elf has feelings for the dwarf. How romantic. Does he know about this? The dwarf? My feelings for the dwarf do not matter in this moment. You will not be leaving here alive. Didn't know that elves went for bullshit. Crow ran up to her, jacking her against the wall, his arm against her neck. This'll be quick. And don't worry about your little lover. He'll be joining you soon. Doubtful, she croaked. Crow pulled his sword back and thrust it towards her chest. Using her free hand, she intercepted the saber and deflected it away from her heart, and instead stabbing her in her side. Again, she screamed as the metal invaded her flesh. Thor dug into her and out her back. She shook her head, laughing at he shook his head, laughing at the struggle. Still fighting to the bitter end. You get marks for that. It's only delaying the inevitable. Just stop and let it happen. Again, she said, you keep making mistakes. And what mistake did I? His words were silent as her hand, moving at a velocity that made it seem invisible, jabbed him under his jaw. His mouth hung open as the only sounds that came out of him was something akin to a dry cough. He tried to speak, but the hacking cough was all he could make. His throat seemed to lock up and seized, his breathing robbing of him. It was now Ryss's turn to smile. Confused? You said it yourself. Shinya Yo is all about fast footwork and precise striking. His eyes bulged out of his head as she spoke. Pressure points. One of the key principles of Shinya Yo. Being able to incapacitate or kill with a single targeted strike. It takes years of study and training to be able to do so. Unfortunately for me, I was first in my class. And did you know that despite our genetic differences, elves and humans have similar pressure points? I was worried that I would miss yours under your tongue. Looks like my worries were unfounded. Crow released his grip on her and his saber and reeled back on his rear. His breathing was slipping away from him. Ryss held the blade at her side to keep the bleeding to a minimum. She stalked towards him, ready to finally put an end to this fight. Normally, I would let you suffocate slowly, but you dare threaten my friends and Thorgan. So now, you get the special death. This one is very secret. It will cause your heart to explode in 5 seconds. I understand it is very painful, Please tell me if it is. Oh, I'm sorry. You can't talk. Oh well. You can tell one of the devils how it felt. The pirate waved his hand, trying to plead for mercy, but such a feeling was alien to her now. In a blurred motion of quickness, she jabbed her fingers into his chest, hitting his vital points that she needed for the desired effect. Crow gave a gagging yell as his heart contracted. Blood soon came flooding out of his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. His body jerked and convulsed in silent rebellion, and finally a gurgle. Captain Crow died at the floor of Ariana's clock tower, surrounded in a pool of his own life's blood. Strength drained from Ryss's body as she slumped to the floor, saber still in her. She felt lightheaded due to the loss of her own plasma. Even with her muscle control, she wouldn't be able to survive this by herself. Hands shaking, she found her calm and called out to it. Thorgan Riffall. There was a slight pause before the dwarf answered. Aye! Is that you, Ryss? Yes, she gasped. Thought Luke had told us not to get on comms unless it was important. It is. I've killed Captain Crow. Ah, really now? Well, good on ya. I bagged one of the Bathory boys, and let's just say he won't be having an open casket for his funeral. That's for true. Good. That's good. Well, what's the matter with you? You sound like you ran the New York Marathon twice over. Clock tower, she said as her hand began to numb. Clock tower. Hey, so what about it? Thor, help me. The small comm slipped from her hand. What little strength she had left was leaving her fast. What are you talking about? Ryss? Ryss! Say something, you bitch! Ryss! He got no response. Fathers, damn it, I'm on my way. You better not die or I'll kick your ass. Come on, Ryss. Stay alive, you damnable woman. She couldn't help but smile at the concern in his voice, profanity aside. The next thing she knew, she found herself meeting the floor as she fell over, face first. Then the room slowly began to darken for her. The last thing she heard was a stream of swears and reassurances from Thorgan over the radio. And that ends chapter 18 of this sniper duel. Put to an end. Yeah, that was a nice little tense one. Yeah, I got the idea for this one after I actually rewatched several playthroughs of the end battle from Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, just to get an idea about how sniper duels can go, as well as I rewatched some scenes from Enemy at the Gates. Very underrated movie, great movie. Ed Harris, Jude Law, good stuff. It's a good movie. Yeah, it was an intense sniper duel, capped off with some intense hand-to-hand combat action. But now you see that Ryss is deadly both hand-to-hand as well as with a gun. Well, let's hope she doesn't die, but she is pretty fucked up. Shot, stabbed, electrocuted. And let's see how she can do this. All right, let's do this right quick so I can know when to for the you know, the timestamps below. All right, out of the way. Time to. Oh, wait a minute. Wait just a minute. Wait just a minute. I completely forgot about this. All right, you bastards. It's that time. I wasn't expecting, I completely forgot this match was up next. But it's that time. You know it. It's the fight every one of you have been waiting for. Everyone in the chat, everyone in the VOD, everyone in the comment section. This is the fight you've been waiting for, and you know what I want to see. Think of this like a good AEW pay-per-view. You had your lucha matches, you had your hardcore matches, and now it's time for the meat. The meat. It's time. Oh, and Hairball's not even here. Oh, he is gonna miss it. It's time for the meat match of the battle. I want to see some goddamn meat chants. Meat, 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 meat. Come on, I'm not gonna until I see some meats in the chat. I'm not gonna start reading it. I want to see meat in the chat. Yeah, give me some meat. Give me some meat. Y'all want to see some meat? Give me some meat in that chat. Time to beat some meat. Time to slap some meat. Meat forever. Come on, I want to see some meat chants in the chat. Give me some meat. If you're watching on the VOD, please comment down below meat forever or beat that meat or big meaty man about to slap some meat. Some meat, come on, meat. Gotta get some meat. All right. I'm not gonna hold it. Yeah, thank you, Devil. That's just what I wanted to see. See some meat. All right, chapter 19. Probably the most anticipated fight of the entire battle. The Battle of Castle Dracula, Part 4. Bruce versus LaRue. Let's fucking go! Let's go! Hold them back, you punks! Screamed Sergeant Queen over the din of gunfire, his troops roared back as they returned fire on the pirates. This area was normally a tea reception area, kept for entertaining guests and relaxing after a long day, but like everywhere else in the castle, it became a bloody battleground. The gentle splendor ruined by this battle. Queen's group had run into a rather large collection of pirates. They were outnumbered but made up the difference with their displaced teamwork and sheer stubbornness. Both sides were dug in this oval room, the elegant furnishings turned into makeshift barriers and covers. It had been over 10 minutes since the gun battle erupted. Old Cyclops squeezed off a few rounds of the pirates, themselves yelling at him and picked. He didn't try to understand what they were saying. All he knew was that he had to clean these fools out of the castle and move on. Bastards seem pretty dug in, Sarge, one of the troops told him. Then we'll have to dig them out. Where are the other units? Hope some of them get some heavy artillery, he asked. The others are on the other side of the castle. They won't be able to get here fast enough. Brag, the old Lycan cursed. Then we'll have to flank them. Get Newt, Sanchez, and Arlena. Have them go around the long way. Yes, sir. Queen didn't hear the first impact. I mean, how could he? It was mingled in with the rest of the explosions, both outside and inside the castle. It wasn't until the fourth rumble that he began to take notice of it. With the decades of service to the royal family, he knew the difference between the sounds of varying explosive devices by heart, but these were unlike any sounds that he'd ever heard. After the next few minutes, he began to doubt if they were really bombs at all. That's when he looked up. The ceiling was shaking. There were cracks forming along the plaster. The sounds were coming from above. He was about to say something when the room itself shook hard. It was so hard that the gunfire ceased on both sides. The sound had so unsettled all the fighters in the room at that point. What in the name of the Emperor? Just then, the ceiling exploded in a thick cloud of rocks and dust and into the room. Both sides took cover behind the furniture, avoiding the mess enveloping the room. There were shouts and swears from the defenders and invaders alike as they tried to make sense of what just happened. There were some coughs, sneezes, and a few spits on the ground. What the sneck was that? He bellowed Queen. No one could give him an answer. The dust cloud began to clear, and he could make out two figures rising from the ground. One he recognized easily, that of a Sasquatch. The other was human, although one of the biggest humans he had ever seen outside of the wrestling feds. His dress was similar to the invaders, meaning he was a pirate. Shakata Kinamata. The Sasquatch groaned as he knocked the dust from his fur and massaged his neck. The giant of a human said nothing but dusted himself off. Both had small bruises and cuts over them, either from the fall or from what he assumed was the fight between them. This is what caused the booming sounds earlier. Two titans fighting each other. What's a Sasquatch doing here? You think he's with the invaders? Queen shook his head. He's not with them. The princess hinted that someone else might be joining the fight, a freelancer and his crew. If they're here, then I know who this guy is. He cracked a toothy smile. This guy is Groose. All the recruits' heads snapped at the drill sergeant at what he said. And then they turned to looked at Groose in a type of horrified awe. Already they were talking amongst themselves, exchanging a few various stories and rumors about him. Groose? As in, the Groose? I heard about what he did in Houston. Heard he painted the walls with so much blood they had to repaint it 3 times. I heard a guy once stole 300 drags from him and skipped town. He hunted him down all the way to the Union and bitched him up something fierce. I heard the S3 have a bounty on his head for beating down one of their admirals. They said no bounty hunter has even tried to cash in on it. Even amongst the military of the castle, Groose had a reputation. On the other side, the pirates conversed between themselves and picked, more likely talking about the same thing as the recruits. Two never lost eye contact with each other, even with all the talk in the room. Should we help him, Sarge? Asked one of the troopers. Queen scanned both giants carefully. No, not this fight. Look at them. They've been thrown down for a while. And anyone or anything that can fight Groose like that and not die is a bit out of our pay grade. Besides, you see that look in their eye? These two really want to have at each other. If we get between those monsters, we're liable to get pasted ourselves. Let them deal with this. And for another, I kind of want to see how this plays out. We should fill that tosser with lead. How about Overoo? One of the pirates shouted. Don't do that, you git. Another said. We seen old Daddy beat the piss out of everyone around him. When's the last time you seen someone go around with him and not get bit cold? That hairy tosser is a meaner. We're getting that soup and we's the ones getting greased. Best let Daddy take care of this one. Yeah, and Oz wants to see it too. I'll bet 50 jacks that old LaRue knocks the granny out of him. Oi, I'll take a piece of that pussy. Soon the pirates were busy amongst themselves, throwing bets and counter-bets around between them. Queen was tempted to walk over there and put his own bets down, based on how they were acting, but he thought better of it. But he couldn't deny his excitement. The atmosphere had changed from a gun battle to a big prize fight from the days of the old world. A 20-round slobber knocker between two stallions in their prime. Standing room only. It was unlikely that either side would open fire. They were too enraptured by this bout that's about to go down. Hey, Groose! Called out Queen. Beat him! Chee! He gave a thumbs up and cracked his knuckles. Stomp this yell out of him, Daddy! LaRue snorted before removing his scarf and coat. His muscular arms were a sick road map of scars that crisscrossed his skin from waist to shoulder, the visible signs of the experiments that gave him his superhuman strength. Even if he could speak, I doubt he would. There was no need for them to exchange verbality. These men spoke the language of the fist, and they were about to have a very long conversation. As if someone rang an imaginary bell, the two masses of muscle ran for each other. Their fists collided, the force of the impact causing the whole room to quake, the floor beneath them to break into spiderweb-like cracks around them. As both invaders and defenders felt the pressure of the impact, they all secretly glad they opted out and joining in. The two threw their leaps, again, crashing against each other, their mammoth power affecting the environment as before. They stared at each other with gritted teeth. Their power was nearly equal. This was going to be a test of stamina and durability as one of their strength. They unleashed a fury of punches against each other, each blow meeting flesh and bone of the other. They connected with punches to the face simultaneously, but neither gave an inch. LaRue tackled him, pushing him farther to the wall. Bruce gave him a double-handed axe blow to his back. This halted his movement, but didn't seem to faze him. With a roar, he grabbed him by the sides and threw him to the ground. LaRue rolled to his feet and was back in his face. Bruce caught his fist and began to violently slam him to the ground again and again like a child throwing a temper tantrum. The floor shattered from the impacts, but the human was not flustered. He snapped to his feet, grabbing the arm of the Sasquatch, and swung him hard into the wall. Before he could recover, Ryss ran at him, driving both of them through the wall and into the next room. The onlookers scrambled into the room, trying to keep the fight in view, but keeping their distance as not be victims of the collateral damage. They found LaRue, sitting on Ryss's chest, raining furious blows on his prone body. Ryss grabbed and blocked a punch with his palm, and countered with a hard headbutt, finally getting him off of him. Ryss sighted a marble statue about 9 feet tall from the base, and quickly took hold of it. With the ease that one would pluck a flower from a meadow, he picked the object free and walked over to his foe. He smashed the statue over LaRue, blowing the image into thousands of pieces. Base still intact, he raised it again. LaRue raised up and punched the base as he brought it down. It blew apart, throwing pebbles in his face. Temporarily blinded, he didn't see him jump up and cracking him in the jaw with his knee. Ryss staggered back, LaRue showing no quarter. He poured on the blows, working his midsection. He jumped again, landing another hard knee strike. This time, Ryss was ready for him. He grabbed him by the legs and lifted him over his head and took off in a short sprint. Like a large, hairy rabbit, he hopped into the air and gave the mother of all sit-out power bombs. The maneuver was so powerful that the floor collapsed beneath them, sending them falling 20 feet to the floor below. The onlookers looked down and saw the pair snap to their feet and engage in fierce battle once again. "Those basilisks," commented Queen as he watched the fight continue. "Sir, these men, if you could even call them that, are far stronger than we thought. I could tell by the way how they were fighting. They've been slowly ramping up their strength little by little." "Ramping up? You mean?" The trooper looked back down at them with a unfathomable awe. "They're holding back?" "Aye," said the Cyclops. "These bruisers probably never fought an equal to them. They're probably subconsciously holding back for a while, but now against someone who's just as strong, just as tough, just as hardcore as they are, oh yeah, the chains are coming off. Their power are coming off, slowly but surely. It kind of scares me to imagine how strong these tanks really are." Ryss landed a cross hook. LaRue sailed back several yards into the wall, destroying it utterly. LaRue paid back with his own, slamming him into his own. The pirate leaned forward, hands on his knees, as he watched his opponent rise from the rubble, muttering something in his native tongue and kicking away some stones. Both were sporting bruises along their faces and bodies, blood trickling from spots in their faces, but neither showed any signs of intimidation, exhaustion, or fear. LaRue's mind drifted back to his fighting on the streets of New Washington. He was always big and always strong. There wasn't anyone who could last a minute against him. When he was old enough, he joined the Grand Army, hoping to use his power for more useful ends. He could not find any cadets or officers who wanted to spar with him. Not even the machines they found for him were enough to handle him and his strength. The gap got even wider when he was selected for the Samson Project, the program designed to create soldiers to compete with the larger Imperial Army, or the AOG. The enhancements increased his stats beyond human levels, but robbed him of his voice. Thus, he was deemed a failure because of this. It was a surprise to him when he and the man he knew as Swarley were abandoned during a mission south of the RUS. After this, they wandered to the coast and were picked up by Captain Crow, allowed to be a part of his crew. And still, among the pirate territories, he found no one who was a threat to him. Only his loyalty to his captain and crew kept such feelings in check. But in the back of his mind, he wondered, how strong was he, and who could bring it out in him? Unknown to him, Ryss was having similar thoughts. He reflected on his youth with his family in the north, how even as a youth, he was a fierceness. His was a fierceness that others his age or older lacked. Not even his older brothers and his family could handle him when it came to fighting. Some even said he was the great warrior Uruk, won 1,000 battles and never knew his match in combat. He left his family to find his way in the world by his own fists. The only thing that surpassed his love of battle was his love of women and sex. Both were easy to find in the Empire. He joined Lucas's crew out of loyalty when the former cop found the murderer of Bruce's girlfriend. He loved being around the others and their newest addition, but he too wondered what his power were, and if there was one who could test him to try it out on. They locked eyes with each other. An uncommunicative understanding was reached between them. Then an odd thing happened. They both smiled, a sort of insane, sadistic smile that neither had ever seen before. It said all that needed to be said between them. This guy is tough. He can take it. Bruce slammed his knuckles into the floor and gave a thunderous roar. So loud was the roar that it could be heard throughout the entirety of Castle Dracula, even above the sounds of combat that peppered the palace. This was, well, I can't really pronounce it properly. It roughly translates to war cry. This was only used when family groups were to total war with one another. This cry meant that there would be no mercy to be expected or given. This was the first time in Bruce's life he had ever did this. LaRue didn't understand what it meant, but he knew the gloves were off. "Oh, my makers," muttered Queen. "Sir?" "The chains have come off! Let's go!" He rushed out of the room ahead of his troopers. "That guy's got the right idea! Let's go, lads!" The pirates followed after them. His roar finished, Bruce snarled at LaRue. The human took up his fighting stance and waved for him to come on. He charged at him, gaining extra speed by running with his arms, too. LaRue stood his ground, waiting for the storm of fur and meat barreling towards him. The pair collided. They tumbled and rolled in a high-speed ball. Tangled up in fists and limbs, they rolled down the hall and demolished another wall, but this time was wholly different from before. Inside the room, the fighters found themselves in open air, several stories in high. They either didn't know or didn't care that they were falling hundreds of feet to the ground below. It didn't stop or lessen the intense hand-to-hand combat. They pummeled each other senseless until they reached the ground. As chance would have it, they landed right in the middle of one of the many gun battles around the castle. The impact was like a missile hitting the ground. An explosion that tossed up so much debris, both sides stopped fighting due to a lack of visibility. What they saw as the dust cleared was the pair, still pounding away at each other. Like before, the pirates and the gods ceased their battle and stood transfixed on the ultimate display of physicality before them. "Aye, let me stick one of them with you, daddy!" shouted one of the pirates as he ran forward towards them with a sword and a smile. "No, get back here, lad! Don't go near that!" He ignored his mate's warning and continued until he was within arm's reach of the pair. It's not sure who did what or when, but as soon as he got close, the upper part of his body simply exploded into a cloud of blood and organs, leaving only his hips and legs falling uselessly to the floor. After seeing this, the viewers made it clear to keep far distance away from them, and they fought on. A quick combination of blows broke Bruce away from the pirate. Bruce, leaping with the agility that was surprising considering his size, landed a drop kick. The force sent him flying, scattering any pirate or defender who happened to be in the way, and crashing into a statue. Finding his bearings, LaRue snapped to his feet and grabbed a pillar, which probably weighed between 5 and 10 tons, and ripped it from its foundations. He swung it hard like a baseball bat, whacking poor Bruce. He sailed upwards a few floors, destroying a room he landed in. Bruce bellowed as he vaulted from his landing spot and dove at him. LaRue tossed the pillar straight at him, only for the Sasquatch to swallow out of the air like a fly. He rammed him with a high-speed headbutt, LaRue rolling from the impact. LaRue spat out a large chunk of blood, but his will to fight still burned. He looked to either side of him. There were nice big pieces of stone next to him. He grabbed one in each hand and readied himself. When he got close, he smashed the two on top of Bruce, getting a pained roar out of him. A large bit of shrapnel had embedded itself in his shoulder. LaRue followed it up with a spinning roundhouse kick, kicking out, knocking some spit from his mouth. He went for another, but his foot was caught. Bruce spun him around like a tornado and flung him into a wall. Not willing to let him recover, he charged, ramming him through the embankment. then another, and then another, and then another, until they were in another outdoor section of the castle. Bruce pushed him hard, his body sliding along to the ground. The hairy mountain took this time to reach behind him and remove a sharp bit of stone from his shoulder, sending an arc of crimson through the air. LaRue stood up, though not as fast as before. The fight was taking its toll on him. His implants were burning through his flesh. It was getting harder and harder to breathe. His left eye had begun to swell shut, and he was sure he had some internal injuries with how much blood he was coughing up. He still could not stop or back down. Bruce was about the same. He felt a few of his teeth felt loose and cracked. The wound in his shoulder was painful but manageable. He blew out some blood from his nostrils. His legs felt like old jelly. He had never been pushed this far in a fight before. Around them, the defenders and invaders gathered around like a crowd watching a good wrestling match. There were cheers and jeers. Both sides stood firmly behind their chosen champion. It was as if this whole battle in the castle would be decided by this one duel between these two magnificent warriors. No one thought of firing a shot or swinging a blade. They only wanted to see this match to its end. They had wrecked a good chunk of the castle and wrecked each other even harder. They had never seen a fight like this before, and maybe they won't ever will again. They wanted to remember every detail of this one. This was the final round, and it was still up in the air about who would be the last one standing. LaRue moved first, laying a thunderous punch to the jaw. Bruce tilted on his leg, trying hard not to fall. He regained his footing and fired back. The human tumbled a bit, but kept vertical. He hit the ape again. Bruce's vision blurred with that one. Fought back with another punch. LaRue battled the sense of unconsciousness that washed over him. Back and forth they went, trading punch for punch, both struggling to not only stay standing, but to rally the strength needed to hit the other. Pain compounded upon pain, fatigue upon fatigue. They had achieved a sort of middle ground, feeling immense pain, but feeling no pain at all. Their bodies screamed for them to stop, but their spirits willed them to fight on. The rest of the world faded away, and all they had left was the sensation of hitting and getting hit. This was their world now, and the world would not end until one of them had finally said, "Enough. I've had enough." That time was getting closer by the second. They didn't know how many bones they had broken, or how many organs they had ruptured, or how much blood they had lost. All they knew, they just wanted to keep going and see how far was too far for them. The cheering had long since stopped. The crowd had deadened into a hushed, respectful silence. Even though they were enemies, they had one thing in common. These two men had everyone's respect, and they would not sully this fight by interfering. Around them was a ring of blood, the obvious result of them trying to beat the other to death. The only sounds that could be heard was the blows they were landing on each other, and hard, ragged breathing. LaRue and Bruce landed punches on each other at the same time. They wobbled and swayed, both struggling to stay standing. It was a fight they had both lost, that they sank to their knees, collapsing from the drain on their reserves. Their faces swollen, bloody messes, as they glared at each other. LaRue threw another cross, but it was about as effective as hitting him with a feather. Bruce responded with his own, equally as powerless. He looked up at his hairy face, his expression a mirror of his own. His chest felt like broken glass. His mouth was a mess as if he gargled with razor blades. He ordered his arms up to fight more, but they didn't answer. His body had answered for him. "I've had enough." LaRue relaxed his arms. All the remaining strength in his body oozed out of him and into the ground. Done. He could have gotten one or two more shots in, but he ran out of ether completely. He had ran out of ether completely. But Bruce still had some power in him. He nodded to himself. Since he had come to the Empire, he had all heard the rumors, stories about this man, this Bruce. And now, having fought him, he could say those rumors didn't do him justice. He gave a bloody smile, and using the last of his strength, he waved him on. Bruce knew what he meant. He'd give him that respect. He climbed weakly to his feet and stood over him. "Sotai, Suka Laru. Summoning the reserves of his near mythical strength, he channeled it all in one last chopping right. LaRue put up no resistance at all. Fist hit him squarely in the jaw, breaking his neck. His body fell gently to the ground as he was falling asleep. Bruce looked down at the corpse of the man he now considered. The difference between them was paper thin. It could have easily been him now, dead. It was enough to earn his respect and his remembrance. He gave a last roar. This one didn't seem so victorious as if he were saying goodbye to a friend. When he finished, he plopped down on his butt, sat next to LaRue's corpse. Wait, Queen whispered. Just before he could give an order, the sounds of falling weapons filled the air. He looked around. The pirates were throwing down their arms. What in the name of the Emperor? LaRue lost, said one of the pirates in commons. This battle's over for us. You're giving up? He was the strongest of the crew. If he could lose, what chance do we have? Queen considered his earlier order not to take prisoners, but after that legendary fight, he didn't have it in him to kill them anymore. Not that they all witnessed the fight together. Flatman irons, boys. It's over. The troopers saluted and went to their task of arresting the pirates. Just then, one of his men ran up to the Cyclops. Sarge, we just intercepted the comms. What about it? We'll need to confirm the reports, but what we're getting... Sir, Captain Crow is dead, killed by an elven sniper. Queen couldn't help but give a small, deep chuckle at the news. Kane and his crew. Looks like they came through for us. The pirates in earshot of the news gasped, and some even... There you go. No point left, said the pirate who spoke to Queen earlier. Spread the word to the comms. Let everyone know what happened. That should take the fight out of the rest of them. Yes, sir. A few guardsmen tried to approach Glues and the bloody corpse of the pirate he fought. He growled at them, causing them to fall back and keep their distance from him. What's with him? Asked the pirate. It's a Sasquatch thing, Queen answered. If they fight and kill a foe they deem worthy of him, they will stand watch over the body, personally bury it as a sign of respect. He won't move until he gets to bury him. The pirate gave a sad smile and nodded. Aye. That's damn good. One of the troopers asked, The battle over? No, answered Queen. It's over for us. But until the leaders get taken out or captured, it's far from over for the castle. And that ends it. The biggest, most violent brawl of Castle Dracula comes to a melancholic but respectful end. I don't know if any about you guys, but that certainly deserves a meat forever chant. They certainly deserved it. They certainly deserved it. That was a bloody magnificent fight. Sometimes I can't even believe I wrote that. But yeah, as for a theme song for this one, yeah, Meatball ends and it's pretty tragic. As for the theme song for this one, it's TJ Combo's theme from Killer Instinct. It's called Back to Rise. Look it up, and it fits this song. It is a absolute banger. 6 minutes of some of the best rap you'll ever hear this side of any kind of major rap song. It's a fantastic theme song, and I specifically was listening to that song when I wrote this entire scene. For this one, I just wanted to make a nice knockdown, drag out brawl, and I'm sure you guys are appreciative of it. So I have to change the description though. I thought another fight was coming up, but I got ahead of myself. But anyway, the meat fight has ended. I do hope you guys have enjoyed it. Once again, meat forever, yes. In
in the comment section below. I want to see some meat chants, or meat forever, or beat that meat, or slap that meat, or pound that meat, or some kind of variation of meat, because that's what we got in this stream tonight. All right, then. It looks like we're gonna wrap things up, and just in time too. Looks like the next bit of round of storms is about to move in about an hour or so. So, time for us to wrap it up. I want to thank Devil in the chat, also LPH for stopping by. I want to thank everybody who watches and watching on the VOD and what have you. Again, you watch this and if you like the comments, meat in the comments. I want to see some meats in the comments below for this fight. So, we'll continue this on Thursday as a but we go from a bloody match where there was a lot of respect to a match where there is absolutely no respect between them. I'll just give you a nice little hint. Akira is finally gonna get his claws into Willis. Yeah. Next one is just there's gonna be no respect in this next one. This is just gonna be hatred, pure, unadulterated hatred. So something to look forward to, and I know Devil, you're gonna enjoy seeing Willis get to what's coming to him with the way he's been acting. So yeah, you're gonna get it. So something to look forward to in about another 2 days. So look forward to that. So like I said, if you enjoyed this, I'm not going to tell you to like or comment or subscribe or anything below, but just saying, if you enjoyed that fight, just say meat. Just chant meat. I want to see meat in the comments. Meat. Meat forever. So, until Thursday, it's been Shintigercurl, that dude in the straw hat, saying good night and slap that